John Gill's Exposition of the entire Bible, verse by verse, being brought to you by Discovering the Scriptures, being read by Dr. Peter John. We're in Nahum, chapter 3, the last verse, verse 19. Reading first and last from the King James Bible. Quote, "There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the breath of thee shall clap the hands over thee. For upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually?" Unquote. John Gill, quote, "There is no healing of thy bruise, made by the fatal blow given to the emperor by the taking of Nineveh. The ruin of it was irreparable and irrecoverable. The city of Nineveh was no more, and the Assyrian empire sunk, and never rose again, or there is no contraction of thy bruise. As when a wound is healed, or near it, the skin round about is wrinkled and contracted. The Targum is, there is none that grieves at thy breach. So the Syriac version, so far from it, that they rejoiced at it, as in a following cause. Thy wound is grievous to be borne, the pain of it is intolerable, in an old obstinate one, and venerated and incurable, or is weak and sickly, which had brought a sickness and weakness on the state, out of which it would never be recovered. All that hear the breath of thee, the fame, the report of the destruction of Nineveh, and the ruin of the Assyrian empire, and the king of it, small clap the hands over thee for joy, so far were they from lending a helping hand in a time of distress, that they clap both hands together to express the gladness of their hearts at hearing such news. For upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually? To which of thy neighbors hast thou not been troublesome and injurious? Which of them hast thou not oppressed and used with violence and cruelty? What province or city that hath felt the weight of thy hand have been harassed with wars and distressed with tribunes and exactions? And therefore it is no wonder they rejoice at thy fall. The destruction of the city, and so of the whole empire, is placed by Dr. Prideaux in the 29th year of Joash's reign, in the year 612 BC. And by what Josephus says, it appears to have been but a little while before Joash was slain by Pharaoh Necho, who came out with an army to Euphrates to make war upon the Medes and Babylonians, who, he says, had overturned the Assyrian empire, being jealous, as it may seem, of their growing power. Learned men justly regret the loss of the Assyric of Abydenus, and of the history of the Assyrians by Herodotus, who promised it. But whether he finished it or not is no certain. However, it is not to extent in one place, speaking of the Medes attacking Nineveh and taking it, he says, but how they took it I shall show in another history, all which they had come to light and been continued, might have been of singular use in explaining this prophecy. Unquote. Scripture quote, "There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the breath of thee shall clap their hands over thee. For upon whom hath not the wickedness passed continually?" Unquote. End of Nahum, chapter 3, verse 19. End of Nahum, chapter 3. End of the book Nahum, done by John Gill, his exposition of the entire Bible, verse by verse. Brought to you by Discovering Scriptures, being read by Dr. Peter John.